Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing the AuthorTube Newbie 2.0 tag, which I wrote up the answers to many months ago, but just didn't get around to yet. And I was Googling around YouTube today and discovered there's already an AuthorTube 3.0 Newbie tag, but I just figured just go with the answers I already typed up, and maybe later, if I'm interested, I'll do the 3.0 Newbie tag. And my middle name is Ursula. My real first name is Anna, but I've long preferred my middle name because it's just like a lot more interesting, and that is the name I have published many of my books under, Ursula Hartline. My other pen name is Carrie Ann Brownian, and I do plan to have some future videos about how I chose my pen names and such, so let's just get down with the questions. Number 1, what is your book's pitch? If you have multiple works, choose your favorite. And now, the book which I'm primarily focusing on right now is a radical rewrite and revision of the book formerly known as The Very Last. If you've read my blog, and there are links down in the description box, I've talked many times about my Atlantic City books over the years. I created them in 1991 in November when we were both 11 years old. I really grew up together with these characters. Now, obviously, this book does have like a new and improved title for publication, but I'm keeping it secret until then. It's based on a line from one of Charlie Chaplin's sound films. It's not The Great Dictator, if you're thinking it's the most obvious example, and it's the third of the 4 books in the prequel series with these characters, and they just go on and on through life. It's a multi-generational like family town saga, and I absolutely love that kind of story. I just can't do it like a standalone. It's very difficult for me. I just want to stay with these characters throughout the entire journey through life and get to know each new generation. It's totally foreign to me just to write like a 300-page book about a single character with like a single like fast-paced bang 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 plot and then like just move on to someone else already. So anyway, this is a synopsis for the book formerly known as The Very Last. During the historic year of 1940, Cinnamon Filliard deals with life-altering changes at home, an election which she hopes will give her beloved President Roosevelt a 3rd term, and an ever-increasing pull towards pursuing a better education in her school's progressive track. Ceenie remains at heart a fun-loving girl, and way more spice than sugar. But she also wants a different kind of future life for herself, and that means taking on more mature responsibilities and becoming more serious about school. Number 2, if you were a book, how would you pitch yourself? A riddle wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma was born on the 5th night of Hanukkah in Pittsburgh in 1979. Yes, believe it or not, I really am that old. Ever since then, she's been on an amazing journey through life as an eternal outsider looking in, with her life unfolding on a much different schedule than that of most of her peers. However, the greatest rewards and joys often come to those who suffered greatly and waited a long time for recognition. Number 3, what do you usually write? Historical sagas, deliberately planned, plotted, and written at doorstopper length. And believe it or not, my books I deliberately planned and wrote to be super duper longer, like written and planned a lot more carefully than my like short books, which are mostly my Atlantic City books, the rough drafts of which are all like under 100K, and surprisingly they've ended up a lot longer than I thought they would be when I've done radical rewrites of them years later. So I guess that really isn't the length that's natural for them, but still they're much shorter than my like so-called adult books. So anyway, I think I began writing historical at age 8 in 1988, and at first mostly did 19th century stories. I also had a set of characters from the 18th century. From about 1993 to 2017, I only wrote 20th century historicals. In recent years, I've resurrected my 18th and 19th century characters, whom I thought I had shelved forever. I figured they were meant to be if I never forgot their names and stories in all these years. I just wasn't mature enough to write those books in the way they needed written when I was younger, and my 18th century characters I did use in a short story I wrote a few years ago, and it was selected for one of the stories. I believe there were 11 total chosen for the Insecure Writers Support Group anthology Masquerade. Oddly suited. Its theme was YA romance with a theme, like Masquerade, and as you'll be surprised when later, because I don't really like contemporary YA or much YA at all, but because the main character in that story is like 17 years old, so it does classify as YA, even though my writing style doesn't really fit with what most modern people think of as YA. But anyway, it was really exciting and fun to be one of the stories that won that contest for that anthology that was published, and that was totally awesome. My secondary genre is soft sci-fi. Now, it's been quite a while since I did any of that, apart from a story I wrote for a contest in 2017 that was also for the Insecure writers support group. It was, I believe, like some kind of like drama or thriller, and it was, when the sun is about to burn out and become like a red giant and people can't live on the earth anymore at all, and these people have, come back to get, some like artifacts to see if there's any left before everyone has to evacuate earth and like go back into deep space, and it becomes a matter of time, like, oh, we did some miscalculations, this sun is set to become a red giant a lot sooner than we thought, we have to like get the hell off of this like doomed planet, like while there's still a chance. And I really enjoyed writing that story. It was called Birkat HaChama, which is the name of the blessing we Jews make for the sun every 28 years when it assumes the position in the sky it traditionally is said to have done during the fourth symbolic day of creation. I don't believe like the world was literally only created in 6 days. The days in the Torah like really are supposed to represent much longer blocks of time, and anyway, that's traditionally when the sun came into being. So anyway, I became interested in the idea of writing books set in various future times and places when my 5th grade English class read a book of short sci-fi children's stories, including 2 by Isaac Asimov, who was a member of the tribe. I know it's really cliche to say you got into sci-fi because of Asimov, but he really was the gateway for many people, and I would consider him one of my favorite writers. I guess I would put him in my lower half of my personal top 10. Number 4. What's something you'll never write? Contemporary YA, or pretty much any type of deliberate YA for that matter. Sorry, not sorry. I no longer even classify my own books about young people as YA for anything but metadata indexing purposes, because my writing style, themes, and subject matter are so disconnected from what's been mainstream YA for the last 20 years or so. I see them as books that focus on history and just happen to have young people in the leading roles, instead of books focused on the teen experience, which just happened to be set in the past, like the so-called Gossip Girl silliness. Gossip Girl and period clothes silliness. That's like a style I really hate. It's just like so like stupid and silly. Just make your story a contemporary and be done with it. Don't like act like it's set in the past, but give your characters very like modern like vocabulary and sensibilities. It's also extremely rare for me to write in first person, and my eyes glaze over when I see first person present tense, and even seeing it in print kind of makes me angry. There are like a couple of very specific styles of books which I feel are absolutely perfect for first person present tense. Nothing else would work nearly so well. Showa memoirs, which I believe would be the first time I saw it, and I thought, oh, this is absolutely perfect. Nothing else would work. A book narrated by a very young child, like for example, like a 5-year-old, a book in a stream of consciousness style, or a book about a subject like depression and bullying, where it's very important you constantly be right in the moment and increases the drama and the intensity and stuff. But like the contemporary story set in a high school, why the frickin' hell does that need to be in first person present tense? And to me, it just like reads like, I do this, I do that, I say this, I say that, I do this, and I do that. I. It's like, even writing first person past tense is a lot more difficult, and you need to have like a very, very compelling reason why a story needs absolutely to be in first person and no other like point of view. It's really not as easy as many young people these days believe. Just because they've seen it so much doesn't mean that has to be the modern contemporary default. Like for example, my hiatus work in progress, which hopefully God willing I will be getting back to within the next year or so, is alternative history about Dante and Beatrice, which I've been wanting to write since the spring of 2004. And it was a giant shock to me when it turned out to be the perfect point of view would be in first person, but it's obviously in past tense, which is my usual default for almost everything. But it's just, because Dante wrote all of his major works in first person, and, he's one of my favorite writers who is not just felt, like one of my heroes or a literary idol or a favorite writer, but a dear personal friend, because he, constantly is addressing the writer personally and like speaking in the first person about his own experiences. So like writing in the like third person would have felt like, way too like emotionally distant. It has to be in the first person. And I did have like a moment like, Dante himself has in Canto 2 of Inferno, when he's like totally, like blasted about going on this like amazing otherworldly journey with his idol. I get to hang out with Virgil, my literary love and my master. But then he starts to, have cold feet. I am not Aeneas, I am not Paul, neither I nor anyone would consider me worthy. And so if I start out on this journey, I think it would be an act of folly. And he tells, Virgil, oh, you are wise, help me, my great love and master and sage, like tell me what to do. And so I, after that moment of doubt, I realized, look, this is the only perfect like point of view for this story. It has to be like first person. I just continued on from there. And it's like a very humbling experience, writing as one of the greatest writers in history, one of my own literary masters and great loves. Many young and or new writers outright admit they think the classic traditional default of third person past tense is boring and outdated, and many people seem to have this attitude, like, ooh, writing YA, gotta do first-person present tense, no matter what, I don't know anything else. I also almost always write with large ensemble casts and third-person omniscient, and set my books over many years, which are also not in line with current YA standards, even if my characters usually start out young, so it's like, a classic Bildungsroman, like staying with the character throughout his or her entire life's journey, starting in childhood or as a preteen and ending in early adulthood or even into old age and with a few more generations taking to the scene over the course of the story. Number 5. What's your goal for starting an AuthorTube channel? I'd like to network with other authors so I can improve my marketing and promotional skills and help other authors in return. I also want to connect with other older writers on the serious side of AuthorTube and continue improving my technical skills and confidence in public speaking. I'm not going to pretend, I know all these super duper fancy bells and whistles for editing my videos, but I've gotten a lot better since I started, putting baby steps forward to working with iMovie in November after not knowing or being able to edit videos at all until then. But anyway, so many people in the writing community seem to have been BFFs for years. It would be nice if I could at least be a familiar name to them, even if they never subscribe to me, read my blog posts, or watch my videos in return. It would also be nice to become one of the ambassadors for older writers and non-YA writers, which would counterbalance the idea that everyone is a perky 20-something writing first-person present tense YA that's all of 300 pages long. Number 6. What made you want to start writing? It's just something I've always done, since age 4, as long as I've known how to write. As a result, it's hard for me to relate to people who only got into writing or reading because of a popular franchise or later in life. That's just so far outside of my own experience. Writing is my calling in this lifetime, the way other people are called to being a doctor, a member of the clergy, a lawyer, a musician, or an artist. Number 7. What's your publishing path? Self-published, traditional published, hybrid, haven't decided yet, or just write for fun? After briefly querying in 2000 through 2001, I became discouraged and didn't attempt it again until early 2011. I participated in lots of TradPub affiliated contests, like agents or traditionally published writers, judging query letters and first pages, and I did have a lot of fun with these things. I, got to learn how to improve my craft and connected with a bunch of authors, and I even got a couple of agent requests behind the scenes, but that didn't come to anything, obviously. But they did say they, did like some of what they saw, or, they had suggestions for how to, improve it. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that indie publication is the most appropriate choice for the kinds of things I write. Like, for example, my characters often age drastically through the course of a book and can't be neatly pigeonholed into one age-based category. I have large ensemble casts instead of just one or two protagonists, although sometimes there is an exception, but again, that's really, really rare. A story will focus on only one or two people instead of a huge cast. My stories span many years instead of being wrapped up within a few months or a year, although another exception to this is my Atlantic City books, because obviously they're a series and sometimes the books almost lead right into one another. So but if I did, combine the books that come very close together, they would be much longer. But again, the only reason they're so short is because they're, part of a series and the story continues very soon afterwards in the next book. I deliberately write at saga length and don't think it's morally wrong or worthy of mockery to go well over 120K. My stories are slower paced, character-driven, with a more episodic structure and focused on the journey through life during intense historical events instead of fast-paced and plot-centric. I also structure my chapters like short stories, miniature novels unto themselves, and they do have titles which I realize many people laugh at as stupid and old-fashioned and outdated, but whatever. I love giving titles to my chapters, and many of them are inspired by, works of literature or songs and stuff like that. And so they're like miniature novels. They're divided into multiple sections denoted by numbers or asterisks, which can run as high as novelette length, instead of following the current trend of super short chapters that always have to end on some kind of cliffhanger. Again, that's not something I can really relate to in my own writing. I mean, I know many people think that's the way you have to do it, but my stories would feel, completely fake, and I would feel gross and dirty for trying to write them in a style that's totally not my own, just to fit myself into, what's trendy now. I've never been about, following along with the crowd mindlessly. And these are, some of my books. I know it's a long story, but I currently only own 4 of the books I've published. I do have 12 books, I believe, out as an indie author plus work in 6 anthologies. I have the one anthology I won for the contest story and for Insecure Writers Support Group, but I do need to obviously get physical copies of the rest of my own books I've published. And these are, you can see how long this is. This is like, it was like, I think 330K if I'm remembering correctly, and the hardcover of this is even thicker because I made the inside margin size like much more comfortable. It was only, I think, like 0.7 in this, which isn't, like unbearable. It's not words falling into the gutter, but it is a little like tight for my comfort at a book this size, so I did make it an inch in the inside when I went to like put out the hardcover edition. So you look how long this is, and like tell me which important characters and subplots and chapters and such I should have hacked out, so it could have been all of 300 pages with and still been exactly the same story. And this is another one I had to make the trim size 7 by 10 because it was over 400K, and this is also set over many years. This is like one of the books of my heart, which I'm most proud of. But sometimes I do have books that are fairly short. I think this one is around 128K, and this is technically the sequel, but it's like, really see this as like one book that just took 2 volumes to tell, and like each has like a very specific focus, so that's why I made the decision to split it into 2. This is about 105K. I don't always write super long. Sometimes I write like fairly mid-length or even like relatively short for my standards. Number 8. What content do you bring to the AuthorTube table? A serious, intense personality, straight shooting, brutal honesty, which I attribute to my working class background. That's, just how we talk. We're not trying to be rude or anything. That's, just, how we're used to communicating. Like, I know bourgeois and rich people have a much different way of talking, but, working class people, we come from a different world and we just communicate differently. A refusal to suffer fools or like kitty foot around stuff. Like if I think something is, like silly or goofy or ridiculous or whatever, I'll say it. I'm not going to like obviously try not to insult people or like be mean or anything. I'll always try to see the good in everything. But, I'm just not, going to like, oh, this is good and this is awesome, and I won't say anything the least bit bad about this, even if I think it's goofy, because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I mean, that's just, I talk in a certain way. And a deadpan delivery, channeling the spirit of Buster Keaton. You'll notice I don't really like to smile a lot in my thumbnails or like do like really exaggerated expressions. I just, don't like to smile a lot. I have a deadpan delivery like that. That's, just part of my personality. As aforementioned, I'm much older than the majority of mainstream AuthorTubers. And even if I were still in my 20s, I would not have like a perky, outgoing personality anyway. Sorry, not sorry. What you see is what you get. I've also not encountered many AuthorTubers who deliberately write at saga length like I do, and I'm eager to share video forms of blog posts about, like, for example, writing different types of characters, like arm amputees, pre-Vatican II Catholics, left-handed people, etc., how to salvage an old idea and like still make it work in a newer and better book. Knowing the naming conventions of the culture you're writing about. My secondary blog is all about names, although I do need to get back to updating it more often. I'm mostly focusing on my main blog these days. Using foreign language for flavor, and building front and back matter, like a glossary, which is very important, particularly if you're like writing a multicultural book or a book with people who don't, speak English as their first language. Like, for example, with my Russian characters, I always build an extensive, back and front matter explaining lots of things, but I will be explaining that more in future videos. Number 9. What's your biggest writing struggle? My usual daily word count of several thousand words becomes just a memory when my cyclical depression is active. Lockdown, in particular, severely damaged my productivity, since I'm unfortunately not in my own home at the moment. That's a long, depressing story, and therefore I depended upon going to the library to write uninterrupted and in privacy for several hours a day. But hopefully, God willing, I am slowly starting to get back to my usual like word count and productivity. It's not going to happen overnight, like Virgil said, like the gates of hell are open night and day, smooth the descent and easy is the way, but to return and view the cheerful skies, therein the mighty task and labor lies. Number 10. What's your best writing skill? The greatest writing compliments I've ever received have been praise for my realistic, honest, emotional sex scenes, particularly first-time sexual encounters, and a friend who said she didn't realize I was writing in present tense, third person, obviously not first person. I don't think I would ever do first person present tense for anything besides like a free verse poem, until she read a very intense, dramatic scene on our weekly Sunday blog hop. It also means a lot to me to be told I write child and teen characters very authentically and believably, since I was laughably, embarrassingly off the mark in my younger years. I used to write adults like overgrown teens playing at being grown-ups, because obviously that was all I knew, being a teenager. Well, I wrote my preteens more like older teens, and I wasn't even, like a typical preteen myself. I was just like this unrealistic ideas I had gotten from like, teen and preteen like shows and movies and books. Like I really didn't interact a lot with my peers, so I basically had this like ridiculous ideas, and also I went to a terrible school system in Albany, New York. So in my mind, I really like didn't think there was anything like unrealistic about depicting like preteens, for example, like having sex or doing drugs or like sneaking driving or stuff. It was just like ridiculous. But anyway, I have addressed this much in many blog posts, which I hope to turn into videos in future. And I wrote my children like 30-year-old sages who love discussing politics and great world literature, like totally, totally realistic. Another great compliment I've received multiple times is how well I bring historical eras to life. And number 11 doesn't really apply to me. If you've been on YouTube for a while, what's your best AuthorTube tip? I still have a very, very tiny channel, unfortunately, and I'm hoping I will get to 100 subscribers eventually, someday, God willing, and I will build more virtual friendships with my subscribers, and I'll get more than, like a handful of comments per each video, and like all of my videos will get at least one comment. Like sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of my videos haven't gotten a single comment. Sometimes they don't even get a single like. Number 12, if you're new to AuthorTube, what is your biggest AuthorTube question? How long does it take to make real friends and get a decent amount of subscribers, viewers, and commenters? It seems like everyone is BFFs, and new people aren't always welcomed into the fold, even when they regularly comment on videos, or maybe I'm just like trying to make friends with the wrong people or doing the wrong strategy or whatever. So I really would like help and strategies for getting like more friends and subscribers and comments and viewers and longer watch times and such. Number 13. Are you looking for any new channels to follow, betas, CPs, or any other types of writer buddies? If so, tell us who you're looking for and connect with them in the comments. I'm just interested in making friends with writers in my general age range and who write serious historical fiction like I do. Being the age I am, I never got into the trend of needing to write by committee. Prior to a few decades ago, writers didn't feel they were required to have a whole team of people telling them exactly how to write and edit as they went along. Rather, they learned as they spent more time writing and editing, or worked for a professional editor. And I do realize the importance of having like several sets of eyes on your work as you go along and making suggestions, or particularly if you say like, I'm concerned about what's going on, or like help me do something better or different, or I just want some pointers if I'm on the right track or not. But like if you have like an entire like committee of people telling you, oh, do this, don't do that, radically change this thing because I don't like it, and I think I would write it this way if I were writing the story, but even if that would not work at all for the way you deliberately like plan the story and the character and such. I mean, I know insult to anybody who does like working with an army of critique partners and such, but I prefer like a more solitary thing, and like maybe doing like some crit work with like people in a local writers group or whatever, or like on my blog if I feel it's necessary. But again, like I just don't like the whole writing by committee trend. It's like kind of freaking ridiculous. Number 14. What are you most excited for during this new fresh start on AuthorTube? It would be nice to feel like people actually give a damn about my content and are watching my videos all the way through. It's pretty humiliating and demoralizing to spend a lot of time on a video, like filming, like writing the script, making sure, like the lighting and the position of the camera recording device is decent, like editing it, whatever, like things I need to do in the editing, like, inserting text or editing out like frames where I lost my voice, or inserting images and such, and like resizing the images, and then obviously like uploading it and writing the description, all that jazz, and then see a handful of views and maybe like 1 or 2 or 3 comments if I get any comments at all, after which the algorithm buries the video and makes it almost impossible for anyone to become aware of it. And I do realize it takes a long time for some people to build a channel. Not everyone has like tons of red carpets being rolled out for them, but I really was expecting I would have, maybe at least 100 subscribers after 9 months regularly making content. So thank you very much for watching to the end. I really would like to become friends with more people on BookTube and AuthorTube, and to have like sincere friendships, not just like mindlessly collecting subscribers just so I can say, look at me, I have 100 subscribers. And like, please, if you haven't already, please, obviously I'm subscribing, I'm liking, sharing, and commenting. I really do love seeing comments from you guys, and I'll hopefully see you again very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.